Drift Week killed me, man. Took like at least a decade off my lifespan.
Welcome to the DDM podcast. In this podcast, we're going to be talking about Drift Week, which was put on by Aaron Lousey down in Lone Star Drift. And we have a special guest here, Dustin Miles, who actually went on the trip. And then an always great guest to have on, Reese, Marin, who's been around for a long time in the industry. So, first question, and I guess to you, Dustin, is you brought this idea up to me in the fall of last year, and I thought you were crazy, first of all, for like even thinking it was that they were going to do this, but they ended up doing it. And it was a week-long trip, or is it week and a half, 2 weeks?
It was it ended up being officially only 2 weeks. It's about 14 days because it was the 21st to the 3rd. So it was about 12 days or 13 days, I guess.
Jeez.
It wasn't even. It was a little bit more than a full week.
Wow, and that's just crazy.
A couple extra days, and then the whole trip home. I mean, it ended up being like almost a 3-week fiasco for sure.
Wow. So, I mean, when you first brought it up, that was kind of what you were talking about, and I was like, how in the world are they going to logistically do this? They wanted to do kind of like what the drag racing series does, Drag Week, basically, where they take the cars and they drive on the street with them and go to the different events. And so I'm just kind of curious, how did you logistically actually do it?
Well, I mean, they kind of tricked us that right there for sure. I mean, at the end of the day, though, like, I know a bunch of other people have released kind of like how much they spent, and it relatively, like, compared to like a FD round, it wasn't that bad. It was like the FD round, and not only tire consumption, but money, and it was just a whole lot longer. It was like an FD round that you got tons of driving at and was 2 weeks long, you know? It was crazy. So, like, the budget part of it, like, I mean, I'm sure every dollar that they allocated for it was spent, but I don't really think anyone besides, like, Rudy, but, I mean, I guess not even, you know, actually, like, spent way more than they were anticipating.
Mm-hmm. Dang.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was more so, like, I mean, yeah, it was a lot of money, but I think it's, like, you got to be part of the first Drift Week, or maybe the only Drift Week, you know. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try to pull it off again, but I mean, like,
oh yeah,
the money definitely is something that you can think about, but at the end of the day, it's like that experience. It's like nobody can take that away from you. It's like, I went on the first Drift Week.
Yeah, it was well worth every dollar spent for the experience, for the seat time, for the amount of fun that was had. Like, all that kind of stuff was 100% worth it.
That's cool. So,
it was to the trip was definitely not worth it, though. If I could have gone back in time and planned out better, you know, I wish I would have. But I'm pretty sure that's pretty much every drift event. It don't matter how prepared you are. It's always down to that last night, even at the track, probably even still getting ready for stuff. I'm sure everyone's gone through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So kind of walk us through when you get there. So where does it all start? And basically you want to go through a couple of the tracks that you guys got to drive at. And I mean, how was the driving? And there were some big names that went. So it had to be some good driving.
I think we all got duped on one thing because they were all like, oh, we're going to do the same thing that Drag Week does, except we're going to go do it called Drift Week and yada, yada, yada. But the thing about Drag Week is they only drive about 900 miles total, you know? It's not that far. I mean, it's kind of far, but it's not that far. That was literally like the first day of driving for us. Like, when we left, it was 1,000 miles to get to New Mexico.
What?
Which was just the first day. And it was like they wanted to, the plan for everybody was to meet up at a diner or a gas station the day after Harris Hill and ride out from there. And it'd be like a challenge that was going to be like, who's going to get there first, who's going to get the best gas mileage, yada, yada, yada. Me being a retard and bringing a dog box car on the trip, I was like, well, I'm not going to go fastest, and I'm not going to get the best fuel mileage. Screwing that whole escapade there. You had to like pick and choose, on these things that you wanted to do as far as the challenges were concerned, pretty much. Because they were all like crazy.
How many people actually drove their cars?
How many people actually drove their cars? Everyone, really, except for Chelsea. But, I mean, his car ended up getting driven. And the only reason that Chelsea didn't was because he had to fly out and do an RTR demo. And so he had Lady Chelsea drive his truck. Because by that point, when that happened, that was after Sandia. And that was when Axel's Corvette blew up, so we ended up towing Chelsea's trailer with Axel's car on it from Sandia all the way to Tucson, and then I think Chelsea drove. And that was when Chelsea was back, and Guy Chelsea was back, and he drove, and he trailered it the rest of the way.
Yeah.
But pretty much besides Axel and Chelsea, everyone drove their cars.
That's pretty cool.
So, I mean, it was pretty wild. I mean, and then I guess Officer Dan as well. I mean, Officer Dan, he tried to drive his car, but, I mean, the trailer flipped the first night. He didn't even make it to Harris Hill.
What?
And then the next day, so his trip, I watched a little bit of his, YouTube thing, and I got to kind of see it firsthand because we were like, so the first night, we ended up leaving right after Harris Hill and driving. We got on the road. We were like, you know what? We're going to at least it was like a 11-hour drive or 12-hour drive. And that's unlike a normal car where you're expected to be able to do the 80-mile-an-hour speed limit in Texas that they have on these country roads. But for me to do 80 miles an hour, I would have been sitting at like 4,200 RPM and maybe getting 8 miles to the gallon. God, my car was tuned like really fat for that part of the rev limit. So I did that one time, and I was like, you know what? I'm just gonna cruise it at like 80. I'm just gonna go 80 and have a good time. Ran out of gas like 2 hours later, and I was like, no, I was getting 3 hours on a tank of gas. Like, there's no way I'm out of gas. And then, yeah, we went and got gas for it, and it was out of gas. So from that point, I was like, you know what, and that was actually when we were trying to find Officer Dan. So we go and find him, and he had to buy another trailer after his trailer flipped because he bent his axle on the trailer that he was towing, and had to go to Harbor Freight, buy another trailer, take the axle out off of that trailer because they wouldn't sell just the axle, and put it on his his old trailer to get his trailer back to his house.
What the fuck?
Yeah, it was wild.
Wow.
It was trials and tribulations for everybody. He had pretty much the worst trip, but then ended up being all right because he ended up getting to take his FD car that he hadn't really got to drive that much up until that point, and then it was kind of good for him, give or take a few things, and he got to do a bunch of laps in it. That was good.
Yeah.
But yeah, just much Chelsea and Officer Dan were the only people who didn't really drive their car. Everyone else was pretty smart and brought like a nice, decent car to drive. Me and Fielding were probably the two most uncomfortable people, for sure.
Yeah. That's pretty sweet. So you want to kind of go into the different tracks that you guys did drive at?
Yeah, so the first stop was at Harris Hill, which is like right outside of Austin, Texas, and that was basically like where everyone met. So the morning, we all just met there, and it was like the first 2 hours of everyone just like, saying what's up, getting ready, like putting all their stuff that they needed to put into the support trailer. So we did all have one support trailer, but then we get to the first track, and there was literally like 200 Kendas in this trailer. And You're like, everyone's supposed to be able to put 10 wheels in this, 2 boxes of 2 feet by 1 feet, like a normal sized tote. You're basically we're able to fill up a normal sized tote, 2 of them technically, and stack them on top of each other. And that was supposed to be your box that was going in the big trailer. Now, a lot of people pulled trailers themselves, like Officer Dan, Trevor pulled a trailer, Brandon Wicknick pulled a trailer, and Rudy pulled a trailer. And so that saved a lot of space, but still, even with them pulling a trailer, I ended up having to I didn't really have, because I actually had a partner come on the trip as well, Bitfo, and they actually brought a couple guys that were, getting content and doing stuff for them. So they were going to rent a car, and so when we got to the track, basically it was last minute, I was like, well, boom, let's just disconnect my truck from the trailer, and y'all just drive my truck, and then that way we can drive forward and kind of have, peace of mind knowing that if something happens, we got all my stuff. Like, I get in a wreck or I blow a tie rod out or something on the road, I didn't want to have the support trailer come find me wherever I was, because it wasn't like a uniform, everybody go at once, because I knew everybody wasn't going to drive the same speed. Most of these guys are in like normal, R154 car where fifth gear just goes on forever, and they can, or on LS car, and they can cruise at like 80 miles an hour at like 2,000 RPM, So I was like, I know they're not just going to chill with me at 55, 60 miles an hour. So I wanted to be able to have my stuff. And worst case, if I broke down, I needed a plan B to get my car back from wherever it broke down at,
Yeah.
So I had my truck my truck that had most of my stuff in the bed of my truck. And so that was kind of how I did it.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
So what are some of the other tracks that you guys went to?
So the tracks. Let me just get through all the tracks, and then we'll come back and tell the story. So the first day was, hold on, I got a little track list right now. I got this Fitfo hoodie, and on the back of it, it has the track list, so this will help me remember everything.
Nice.
So the first day, which was January 21st, was Harris Hill Raceway. And so how the trip was structured was basically every day we drifted a day, and then the next day was a travel day, and the next day we drifted again. So the 21st was Harris Hill. The 22nd, we drove to New Mexico, which was 12, 14 hours, depending on how fast you went. And we drove Sandia Raceway. And that was a ton of fun. Then the next day, we drove again, and we drove to Tucson, like right out about an hour away from Tucson, and that was Indy Motorsports Park, and that was, or Indy Motorsports Ranch or something like that. That was crazy. I'll tell you about that. That was actually my birthday too, so that was pretty cool.
Oh, nice.
And then the next day, we had a good chill day. We went to a local shop, Fine Arc, and they let us all like work on our cars because we only had to go. We basically left Indy that night and drove to the next area that we were going to be in. So the whole next day, we had a day to just work on our cars, which is when Axel like pulled his engine, and Fielding had to do a bunch of stuff to his car. Trevor had to pull the head off the Mustang. And then the next day after that, on the 27th, we drove Honda Musselman Circuit, which is right 10 minutes from their shop in near Tucson. And then that was the only day that was kind of messed up, because we had to leave from Honda Musselman Circuit and drive 7 hours to Cali to be at Adams the next day on the 28th. So that was the only like hiccup in the schedule where it wasn't a day of rest in between the track days. We had to literally leave the track day and drive 8 hours for the next to the next track. And that was Adams Motorsports Park. And then we had 2 days of chill time in Cali, where we all ended up getting an Airbnb. So like pretty much the whole trip before, like a little group of people would get an Airbnb or have like accommodations for themselves, and because they were the ones who like actually spoke up when everything was getting planned out and were confident that they were actually going to make it. I was never that confident that I was even going to make the trip. So I was always like quiet about that because I didn't want to say, yo, I'll be there, put me down. And then they count on me to be there and put my name down. And then I'm not there. So I was like, all right, I'll just find my own stuff until I know I'm there. And then, so the 31st, we went to Grange, which we all know how that went down. Mm-hmm. And then 2 days after that, to the Hoonigan Burn Yard.
Yeah.
And then we all extended drift, or no, not everybody, but maybe like half the group extended drift week again after the burn yard, and we all went to Adams again. And Adam LZ rented the track out for us and hooked us up with another day to just drive together. So that was pretty cool.
Nice.
So yeah, that was pretty much the route and the tracks that we visited.
Nice.
What was your favorite track out of them all?
Musselman.
Musselman?
Yeah, Honda Musselman circuit in Tucson.
So
what was that like? That was the one you said was wild, right?
Yeah. No, they were all wild. The Indy Motorsports Ranch was wild, but more so because of just the facility in itself. Like, it was like walking into like a country club where they had like fighter jets. It was like a museum. They had fighter jets just chilling because the whole Tucson area is like heavily like government, like everything, military everywhere. Like, they have just airplanes and fighter jets and everything everywhere. Like, the whole industry is like basically ran upon aerospace stuff. But yeah, so that whole track was just gnarly. I mean, it was beautiful. I didn't even actually make it to the actual track that day, so I didn't actually get to drive on the track. That was the only day that I ended up breaking and having to basically sit out. I got like a few runs in the morning, and I broke my diff, and we found other problems. I guess I'll get into that in a little bit.
Mm-hmm. That's cool. But talk about that other track that you liked, You said Musselman? So what is that track like?
Most, it was like, I think it was a replica of Suzuka Circuit or something like that. It's an exact replica in one section of it of some Japanese track, but I don't exactly remember. But I just liked it, honestly, because the tire wear there was retarded. I got 50 laps on a pair of tires.
What?
And they only died in the end because I was hot lapping so much, they chunked. And they only chunked in like a little bit of section, a little bit of them, but they chunked literally after 50-plus laps, like all day of driving hard on one pair of tires.
Was there a sealant or something? Or
they reseal the track every year. It was just a tight little go-kart track that had like dirt all around it. So there might have been just dirt on the track. Like, nobody was making tons of smoke. Everybody, I mean, the track was hella grippy. It just felt like the tires just gained rubber every lap. Like, it was wild.
That's pretty cool. So were any of these tracks like not have drifting before, or like tracks that you really can't drift at?
Indy, the country club, we were the first people to get to drift out there. And they really brought us out there because they wanted us to like showcase their new like huge skid pad. But to be honest, we all kind of got there. We're like, we didn't drive this way to drive all this way to come to a skid pad, you know? Like, where's the track at? And they're like, all right, y'all get on the track. And then we got on the track, and it was like, holy hell. Like, everyone who drove it said it was the most fun track. Like, huge elevation change, blind turns everywhere. Like, it was crazy. Everyone said. That was the...
Do you think they're going to start having more drift events there after they saw you guys showcase that?
I hope they do. I know all the locals, they were like, yo, we've been trying to go out there for years, and hopefully they'll let it happen, and if not, hopefully they'll let us come back again, because it looked like an amazing facility. But they probably have like so many members or something, and they have like, it's basically open to members, I think, any day of the week. So they would have to like clear it with all the members and say, hey, you guys can't come today, we're going to do a drift day, and then who knows what they might say, or they might be upset, or who knows, you know? I know we have a similar track here that's like a country club for drivers, but we only get to drift there one day a year, and that's July 4th when a noise ordinance is lifted.
Oh, because of the fireworks.
Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah.
What do you think? Which track produced the best tandems, and who surprisingly shocked you as a driver? Because now you got to like hang out with these people for like 4 events. You got to see them kind of. It's one thing when you just see them drive, and it's the other thing when you see them kind of handle their shit like at the track, and then they go to another track, and then I'm assuming right by the 4th event or the 4th track you go to, you're like, somebody must have stuck out to you like, damn, this dude's a ripper. Like, this is the real deal here. You know what I mean? And I'm sure you guys probably got to see that firsthand. And probably what I think is the gem of that whole trip. You guys got to see, like, that one person that maybe surprised you as, like, damn, I knew this dude was a ripper, but this dude's a ripper.
Yeah, honestly, we all know, Chelsea's a ripper, Luke's a ripper, Matt Field's a ripper. So I kind of like left those kind of out of this. Honestly, it was Aaron Lousey. Like, he was the one that I was like, wow, this dude's crazy. Like, it was hard for me to even chase him. He was so fast, and like, I was like trying to, keep up with him. He'd put it on my door, I put it on his. Like, it was just a lot of fun.
What did he drive out there?
He had a SC 300 that him and Mark 1J swapped, and he was a lot like all of us, even though he like just made the trip happen and set all the dates and all that stuff. Like, he didn't get to test his car, he didn't get to drive his car beforehand, but yeah, he didn't end up even being able to finish the trip with that car. He was actually the only person that really didn't get to finish the trip with the car he started with. Like, even Axel blowing a motor, he was out for the majority of the trip, but he actually made it back to the last day in that same car that he started in,
Gotcha.
So yeah, I remember Aaron drifting back XDC days way back in the day, and then he came to Englishtown, and I met him along with Stuart Lease and all them guys, and yeah, I'm sure he definitely did stick out. I mean, once a ripper, always a ripper, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I guess it's just more so that I've always looked at him as like as an organizer, and usually most organizers don't really drift. I mean, there's a few out there that definitely do, but the majority of them I feel like are usually just people like to be on one side of things or the other. Not a lot, like, either you want to be a media guy and that's what you stick with, and that's where you invest your money and your time, or you want to be a driver, or you want to be an organizer. So, it was just surprising to me that, he drove so great.
Yeah. If you actually, you go to the actual Lone Star events, he actually drives a ton during the events too. So, I've seen that firsthand, and he loves just surging up on people. It's pretty fun to watch. That's cool. So kind of talk about. Well, I guess we can talk about your prep into the car, and what did you do to make it so that you could drive it on the street for a week or 2 weeks?
Oh man! So yeah, the whole thing leading up to the trip, man. My car was a complete shell. I had like my wiring harness like kind of laid out, like half of the wiring harness, like basically the body harness laid out in the car. But I completely rewired my car, new ECU, PDM, all this stuff. And it was literally January 5th. My car had no engine in it and only half a body harness done. And we had to leave on the 19th to get down there. So it was like straight 2 weeks of just hell because we had to get everything into this car. It was untuned. We know the car works. We know the engine worked. The only thing that I left on the car as what it was like 2 months before was the rear suspension. I didn't touch the rear suspension or anything in the rear end of the car, but I changed the whole front end, like the whole front suspension stuff. Like, I went and I put all my spare, or actually I took the full angle kit and everything off my hatch, my FD car, and put it on there. And then I took all my spares from FD with me there too, because I was like, I felt like last year with driving the coupe and then jumping right in the hatch, like, it was good and it was great to get the seat time, but it would have been better since they're both S13s for them to both be the exact same angle kit to feel the same, like with, when I toss the wheel, basically it's going to react the same both ways, because beforehand I had the top garage kit on it. And yeah, it worked great. I had a lot of success with it and I loved it, but it's not the same kit that I ran in FD. And I wanted them to be both the exact same. And then that way, boom, I got one set of spares for both cars and I'm good to go.
And what kit is that you're running now?
The GK Tech V4 set up front.
So both cars are going to be are currently running that now?
Yep, both cars now have GK Tech V4 up front. They have different coilovers. The FD car has Stance, and then the coupe has Fortunato. But the rear end of the cars are both very similar, and now the fronts are very similar. So technically, like, I know it's a coupe and a hatch, but they drive a lot more similar to each other now, which was better for me because I used the trip also as a time for training a time for, gaining seat time, like where else am I going to be able to just straight 2 weeks of seat time with some of the best drivers in the world,
Exactly.
So that's kind of that was one of my main goals for the trip, and I definitely accomplished it. I think I didn't get as much time in as I would have liked to, but that's just the only thing I look back on, and I was like, man, I wish I would have just jumped in some more trains or figured out stuff. But it was kind of like hard when we got to the tracks. Like everybody was doing their own things. People like break down, and then some people are like in their little cliques, and they drove together a whole bunch, and I don't know. I mean, definitely got in tons of tandem, but it was just I just wish there always I guess you always just want more,
Yeah.
Did you take anything away driving wise from that? Like, did you you're like, Dan, like I'm gonna try this or?
Oh yeah, one of them was something Luke Fink told me, and it was first gear drops. Like that's something I never done up until this event, and I guess it was because I never really had the need to, because I'd always either been a seated 009 or I'd driven a sequential with a ton of power in the dog box back in the other car with a ton of power and a quick change. So I was always just changing. If I didn't like the ratio, I would just change it out. But I was kind of stuck with what I brung on this trip, and the car was just, it was a dog box that had a really tall, really long gears. So sometimes, like, I wasn't even able, like, the whole trip I basically I couldn't even drift third gear in the car because of how long the gears were, and without making as much power and all that kind of stuff. So even like road courses like Harris Hill, like I basically drifted the entire track in second gear. Like I would enter in third, and then I'd have to downshift to the second. Or I could get into third, but it would be like it would run out of momentum eventually. Like I would be clutch kicking the hell out of it, and it would still just eventually just straighten up. That's because third gear was like a 1.29, which was like basically like fourth gear in a normal trans.
Right.
I was only really running the car at like 350 horsepower. So
yeah,
that was a learning experience. And I mean, other things like,
so what, Luke just kind of came over and was like, yo, let me like try this or what?
I asked him. We were sitting somewhere. Maybe we were watching one of his vlogs, or we were because everybody at their houses every night, they were doing their video thing, editing thing, and I would just sit and watch, because I watch his vlogs anyway. So I was like, well, this is like the live version of the vlog, I'm watching him make it. And I saw him do something, and I asked him, I was like, was that third to, or was that something to third to second or something? He was like, no, it's third to first. And I was like, oh, sick. I was like, I should try that. And then when I tried it, I was like, dang. Because what would happen was I would enter on these turns like Adams, and it would go from like a huge, like run up to where you're doing like 60 miles an hour on that run up, to a really tight turn that you're doing 20. So it's either you're like dropping your car off limiter and clutch kicking it, because turbo car 1J, I don't have any down low anything, and instead I was just dropping it into first gear, and I could just basically like roll into it with the throttle, and it had plenty of power. Like the car's first gear was a 260 or 264 or 271 or something like that. So first gear was really long. First gear would do like 40 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. Like I did the whole Hoonigan Burnyard, all the drifting I did there just in first gear. Gotcha. So at those tracks, I would just like enter in second. I'd drop it down to first, and I would drift a little bit into first gear, and I'd shift into second, back into first. Like it was a lot of second to first. It was.
This is after he drove your car, and you just kind of.
No, this was before. This was before. Oh. This was early in the trip, like a couple times before. He actually didn't drive my car actually on the trip. I wasn't that brave. I waited till the trip was over, and we were all at our fun day at Adams, and I was like, yeah, man. He had already sold his car by that point, so he didn't have it anymore, and he was kind of like standing around on the sidelines like a boy that had lost his favorite toy. And I was just like, you know what, man, go for a drive, go have a good time. And I really wanted to, like, I couldn't necessarily watch him drive my car, because it's kind of like watching another guy like sleep with your wife kind of thing in my eyes. Like it's like, I'm gonna let him go do his thing with this, but I'm gonna go over here and I'm gonna just just let me know if he totals it kind of thing. And after he went and did a few laps, then I started watching him. And I was like, oh, okay, sick, And yeah, but I didn't really like watch him, and I definitely wasn't gonna ride with him because I would have been like in the passenger seat, like whoa, 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 because he's wild.
Nice.
You just kind of chalked
I
it up
never
to
wanted
good
to be looked
faith.
at
You're
in
like,
the
whatever,
ditch.
dude.
Yeah, I was just like, go have fun.
That's sweet. So there's got to be some like stories about trying to maintain cars on the road and like trying to keep them going and stuff. Was the only time you actually broke your car at the drift track, or did you break it on the actual road as well?
So the first little bit of driving that I did in the car, we ended up like driving like an hour after Harris Hill, and then we stopped and got fuel and we got some dinner. And I'm driving a basically like a pro-am car, so I got my Halo seat still in the car. I'm sure you might have seen my car before, but it's just like stickered up, like you can't see really anything out the windows at night just because there's a sticker every 2 inches. And yeah, I backed straight into one of those poles that are in the front of like gas pumps, like the two in the front. Yeah, I mean, I just backed straight up, and I was going to turn, and then boom, and I was like, oh my god, like it felt so vicious in the car. And when I got out, I ran out. Only thing that happened was I cracked the rear bumper and like smashed in the rear of the car a little bit. But we just sat there and like pulled it out and straightened it up, and then threw some zip ties through it, and it was good enough to go, But that was really how I destroyed my rear bumper off the bat, was backing up into a pole, which sucked because I was like, fuck, because it was like the first day that I was with all my guys, and it was like basically like a whole new team for me. They weren't the same guys that's worked with me in FD and stuff, so I was like, fuck, I look like a retard in front of these guys, like I just backed into a pole. I can't even drive my car on the street, And not to mention that, those like it was at the exact same time, like the employees of the Taco Bell that we just stayed at had just ran outside, and they were like, "Holy cow, look at this car!" And then I'm like, "Crunch!" And they're like, "Oh snap!" And then the owner of the gas station comes out, and all the whole big thing, and I was like, "Shit!" And then so I just like kind of threw the car back together, and I start driving from there, and probably 30 minutes down the road, I start hearing this like this repetitive noise that wasn't there at first. And I was like, oh, shit, it's raining, it's cold, it's in the middle of the night, my bumper keeps falling off because my quick latch broke whenever I hit that pole when the bumper popped off. And right at the same time all that's happening, I ended up having a wiring gremlin show itself where one of my fans stopped working. And so not only is the bumper falling off, but the car's like starting to overheat. And it never really overheated with only one fan. It would get to like 210 degrees. And I was just like, so normally cruising, it would be at like 175, 180. And then when the one fan would stop working, it would go to like 200 degrees, 210. So we're sitting there and we're driving. We get so far and we're like, you know what? We're all tired. The bumper keeps falling off. Like the bumper fell off so many times that I just grabbed a drill out of the back of the truck and just like ran a hole straight through my car. And just zip tied the thing on there and was like, all right, it's good to go. Let's go. So we get to some like little hotel in the side of the road in middle of nowhere, Texas, because Texas has these stretches that you don't see nothing until you see like a one stop sign or traffic light town. And then that's it, And so we ended up getting this hotel at this really janky little hotel. And we ended up having to try to fix the car in the parking lot the next day. Well, we were already probably like 3 hours ahead of everybody else. So we had a good jump start on everyone. And we ended up finding like I just messed up in the wiring that I did. Like I tried to put like a Deutsch connector on a relay, and the wires for the relay were like super thick, and the pins for the connector were really small. And so it just like created a bunch of heat in that. And so basically that was what was going on. Like the relay had no contact to the fuse. So that was where the problem was. But it literally took us like hours on hours of searching, probably like an hour and a half really, of us just going through things and trying to find out what was it. Because we'd test it, we'd plug it in, we'd power probe it, and then we switch the plugs and it would work on the other one. And then we were like, what's going on here? It's got 12 volt. Why is it not working? And then we ended up finding that. So we get that fixed, and we're driving on, and the car did great from that point on. Like of that day, like we literally got to just drive, and that was the day that we had to do our longest drive, which was about 10 hours, and we already had a 2 or 3 hour head start, and we ended up being the first team to make it to Albuquerque because we had a little head start. Well, we weren't actually the first team because we were following Chelsea, but we were the first team driving our car to make it to Albuquerque.
Nice.
That's cool.
So, yeah, the only problems that I ever really had on the road were wiring problems with my fans.
Gotcha.
My fault.
Yeah.
That was the only big thing that ever happened to me on the road. And then it was just like everyone had problems that first night of getting from Harris Hill to Sandia. Like, that was the night that Fielding burnt through like 3 fuel pumps. I think other people had other problems. Yeah. It was wild that first day. Because, I mean, I'm sure everyone was in the same situation as me. Yeah, we had 2 or 3 months to prepare for this thing, but we're all drifters and we got a million things going on, and we're driving to other events and other things pop up and cars break. So none of us were, I mean, I think the most prepared, best prepared person was Matt Field and Chelsea. They both had their cars like prepped and done and in Texas like weeks beforehand.
Gotcha. Yeah. So when you actually drove during the week and at the actual events, did you break anything else? And like, so yeah. I mean,
so I had good success the whole first part of the trip. Basically, like Harris Hill didn't have really any problems. Well, I had a fuel problem at Harris Hill where like I like filled my gas tank up because we didn't really have we didn't have our trailer, so we didn't have like jugs of fuel with us. There was a support trailer that had jugs of fuel, but if you went and got a jug of fuel, you had to go fill it up and all this headache. So I would just like top my car off all the way, and then we all know every drift car that's topped up full leaks fuel out of the fuel tank somehow. Especially my car still had a stock tank, so we ended up like changing I ended up having. Luckily, this all happened at the track that my trailer was still there because I like drove in that day. I unloaded my car at that track, so my trailer was still there. So I still had all my stuff. So I went looked through my trailer. I ended up having like another one of the little gaskets for the the sending unit. So we changed that out, and then we RTV'd that thing shut. So we were good. And then, so that day I had that little bit of a problem. And then the next day we was driving. That was the wiring problem. Sandia, I had a good time. Didn't really have too many big issues there. And then the next day was at Indy, and that's when I broke my diff, and that was my birthday, and that sucked. So I break my diff, and it was just on this skid pad, like literally like the wildest, most grippy skid pad you'll ever drive on in your life. It was brand new. We were the first people to get to drive on it, and it was just like retarded grippy. Me and Fielding broke our diffs within 5 minutes of each other on the same track, doing the same stuff. And I found hairline cracks on my drive shaft on the front and the rear yokes. So that was the kind of like day ender for me. I was like, I could risk it and maybe break my drive shaft, which I did not have a spare of. I had a spare diff. So when I broke my diff, we were changing the diff out, which sucked too because I had a 3.7 in the car, which would make the car a lot more laggy, and then my spare diff was a 410. And so that wasn't such a big deal. It was great for the drifting, but on the cruising of the road of the next days and stuff, like it sucked. Like it made me going from where I was able to cruise at like 3,500 RPM and be at like 75 miles per hour, and now I'm cruising at like 3,800 for $1,000 to do 70 miles an hour, 75, 72, So it messed up that part of the trip for me, but honestly I didn't care because it was so much better for the driving all around,
Yeah.
So that was the big thing there that broke. And then basically, as far as the trip goes from there on out, I didn't really break too much more. At Musselman, I ended up bending a tie rod because we run the layout one way and it was really fun, but then when you flip the layout around the other way, it was like a huge entry where you could throw, like, you come in super hot, and then, like, as you entered, like, and drifted more, like, it made it so you could throw, like, the sweet backies. So everyone's out there trying to throw backies, you know? And every time you get out there and start trying to throw backies back to back to back, you're going to break something every time. So I ended up bending a tie rod and throw that on there. And also at Muscleman, I messed up, or I had one of my calipers seized up and broke. I went to pull the e-brake and it just pissed fluid out of the middle of it. So luckily the liaisons at the track or the shop that we were all working on our stuff at, their neighbor had like a parts graveyard behind his shop where he had Z32 twin turbo parts car just sitting there, and I like pulled the caliper off, drove straight over to his shop. I had the car fixed in like an hour and a half. Just got super lucky that he had a parts car there with a caliper on, and so that caliper's still on my car and still doing good.
That's sick.
Yeah, that was lucky. Those guys actually at that shop, Fine Art, like they were saviors. Like they literally opened up their doors to their shop, their gates. They let us park all our stuff there, and they let us just work on our cars, do everything. Like they ended up like cutting Fielding's subframe mounts out for the front of his diff, because when he broke his diff at Indy right when I did, he, I guess in the process, or maybe it was already done, but the front of his subframe was stripped out. So they ended up cutting the subframe out and then pulling that part of the subframe out and re-welding new nut certs into the subframe and then welded it back into the car. Like, what? And that was also the same place that Trevor changed the head on the 2J Mustang, and that was where Axel pulled the motor out of the Corvette. So at the same time, everybody's doing all these things.
That's crazy.
We were lucky enough. We got there first because we left Indy after my drive shaft broke. So we drove straight on over to Fine Art and pulled the drive shaft out where we got there. One of the guys that works there, or like their main thing that they do there is they build stuff for like NASA. So he's like like he does welding all the time. So he welded that thing back up for me, and yeah, we were good with that for the rest of the trip until the very last day when we were at Adams and the drive shaft broke.
Gotcha. Wow, that's crazy. So how would you say the actual event was like organizationally wise? Like,
no one knew anything. No one had any idea about anything. Like, all that we knew were that the tracks were selected and the dates were set, and there was no rearranging that. So we all just knew, hey, So you
had to like book your own hotels. You had to figure out all your traveling ish stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So Luke Fink's wife, she took the liberty of trying to get accommodation set up for everyone, and everyone that spoke up originally, like they had a decent sized group that stayed together the entire trip, but so everyone who didn't speak up kind of had to fend for themselves. Mm-hmm. So we had to fend for ourselves like the first few nights. It ended up working out sweet for us in a couple places because we ended up just crashing at Officer Dan's house one night, and then when we got to Tucson, we stayed there for a couple nights. And we ended up just crashing at one of the guys that worked at the shop's house. They had like a super nice house with a whole bunch of spare bedrooms and couches. And he was like, yeah, just come to my crib. And we were like sick because all those days like saved the trip for me budget wise. Like if I would like that extra like $400 that those 2 days or 3-4 days would have been in hotel stays would have just killed my trip. I would have came home with absolutely no money.
Mm-hmm. That's cool.
Yeah, so that got really good.
Yeah.
And then the whole Cali trip, since we all kind of knew what we were doing and how we were doing, and everyone had confidence in their cars at that point, we all stayed in the same Airbnb for 6 days in Cali. So that was fun.
Sir.
That's cool.
Yeah. That was it felt like a reality TV show, like being in just a house with all these people that, like most of them are like only real people. Like, I mean, I've obviously had conversations with a lot of them, but majority of them are just like people that I've watched their vlogs. So it's just like really weird, like I don't know if anyone else feels this, but like Jared DeAnda, like you see him, you talk to him in person, but you feel like you're hearing him, on the microphone or something. You're so used to hearing them in that way that it's weird hearing them in person, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And it was kind of like that a little bit, but it was cool. Everyone was super cool. The whole group like really vibed together like really really well. And I don't think that's something that was planned or anything like that. It just kind of happened that way. Like everyone got along with everyone. There was only one like small little point where I thought Luke Fink and Matt Field were gonna fight, and then I was like, "What? Get the cameras!" And then it didn't happen.
Nice.
Damn. That would have been nice, though. Yeah, I mean, it would have been some good talk. You know?
Yeah, that would have got all the views right there. But poor old Matt Field would have got crushed. Boy, Luke's a big dude.
Yeah.
Was it just great old American pride against good old Aussie pride, or what?
It's something like that, man. They all were in a big train at Indy, and it was one of those things where they're like 6 cars deep, stacked up, and then the first car, it was a skid pad, So what sucks about tandem on the skid pad? There's no definitive line. There was not really a track marked out. They set out a couple cones, so everybody's doing their own thing, and then you go and try and chop the line a little bit to stack up with someone, and then they spin out, and then all of a sudden it's just a domino effect, boom, 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 boom. And it was one of those situations where Matt Field ended up hitting Adam, and then Matt tried to put the blame on Luke. It was I think Mesker or someone spun out a little bit in the front, and that's what caused everything. And then Matt came, his car's wrecked, and Adam LZ's car's wrecked, and so Matt's coming over there. He's all pissed. He was like, "Why the fuck you gotta slow down in such a spot? You know what's up?" And then Luke's all like, "Yo, this ain't FD, man. You need to calm your ass down. You hopped in that train. You know what time it is, bro? You need to calm your shit." And then right then I was like, "Oh, it's about to go down," and it didn't really go down. And then everybody was like, "Oh yeah, you're right. It was all cool." Everybody was hugs and singing "Kumbaya" and shit.
Ah, man, I would have been like, "Yo, you're gonna let him talk to you like that, dude?"
All right, I was like, "World star," but
it's good to see that, but at the same time, it's good to know that they're just kind of goofing off. And
yeah, that's what I think it was.
I don't think anybody takes that shit real serious.
I think it was a little bit of seriousness in the beginning, and then everybody was kind of like, it's drifting. We all know what happens. It's not something that we're not aware of. It's not something that's out of the realm to happen. It's gonna happen. You jump in that train, it can go down.
Yeah. So
you go in there knowing that this could possibly happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So is this event that you would recommend for other people to do? Is this something you'd want to do again next year?
I mean, I think everyone would want to do it. I don't really see any point in anyone really not wanting to do it, because it's where else do you get the opportunity to? Honestly, with being able to street drive your car to events, you're saving tons of fuel mileage on trailer in your car. You're saving tons of time and hassle at the track. The thing that sucks the worst when you're bringing your trailer and you pull out all this stuff at the track is the cleanup. Is the setup, is the all these things that take a lot of time and a lot of effort and a lot of just draining. And the trip was just that was the coolest part about the trip. It was all right, we're done. Throw a couple things in the back of the truck. Throw some things in the car. Let's get on the road. And then the next day we're driving and we're chilling, relaxing, and then boom, we're at another track the next day. You just it was just driving, man. During the event, I was so stressed out, and I was like, yo, this is I'm just I don't even know if my car's gonna make it. I don't know how things are gonna do, because I brought a full on pro-am level car for sure to this thing, and that was not smart. It was not comfortable. I really wish I would have had some form of a car that I could have brought that was different, but I didn't have anything else that would be able to drive at all the tracks, be fun to drive, and keep up with everybody and have a good time.
Yeah.
And I wanted to drive something I was familiar with and confident in enough to make the trip.
Yeah.
So that was why I chose my coupe. But people like Aaron in the SC300 or Matt Field in that Corvette. He had basically a stock ass car, with a cam and exhaust on it and full suspension. I mean, he had 2 TV iPads like set up in the car. He had one doing navigation, one doing Netflix. They were driving. I mean, they did 130 miles an hour for like a full. They did a. So at Musselman, he broke his torque tube, and they fixed the torque tube, and then drove from Tucson to LA. And like that's like a normal that took me like 7.5 hours. They did it in like 3.5 hours, 4 hours. They were 120 an hour the whole way.
That's sick, dude.
He even got pulled over at one point speeding, and the cop just loved the Corvette, and he was just like, "Woo!" And it was so funny. Like someone else passed them, and they throw into the group text like a picture of Matt's car, like with a cop behind it, and we all knew like he was like doing like 120 miles an hour the whole time, and he was like, "Oh, I'm good, boys, back on the road. Cops love a Corvette, you know." And we're like, "All right, sick."
Oh,
So,
man.
yeah,
What's your take? What's your take on the Corvettes, man? Because I definitely want a Corvette. And I've been skeptical about it for like a year, 2 years, but like the more and more I see people, the more I see people, not so much the driving, but the way they look styled up, I'm like, I can get down with
I
that.
want one. I'm not gonna say I don't want one. You know, like
Yeah, right.
go and buy that Joker, throw some little angle mods on it in a hydro, and you're gonna go have a good time. You know what I mean? Like you can have AC, you can have a radio, you ain't gotta modify it, you barely even gotta work on the thing. You know, you just enjoy it. And I feel like there's not another car out there that'll give you all those things in one package. Like, yeah, 350Z gives you 85% of those things, but at the end of the day, it's still kind of slow, you know, like in its stock form. Like, it's quick, it's fast, but, you know, you pull up next to an SR S13 or, you know, a 1J S13 or 400 horsepower or 240, and you're getting smoked, you know? But a Corvette, you throw a cam in it, you got 400 horsepower, and they got
torque.
tons of grip and everything, you know? Like, yeah, they're just like the best all-around car that you can buy. I feel like, especially after that trip, you know, being comfortable, fuel mileage. Like he got like 25 miles to the gallon on the thing, 30 miles to the gallon, just cruising at like 85 miles an hour. It was retarded.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, like if I could do it again, and someone was like, "You can have any car to go do this," and I'll be like, "Give me a Corvette. I'm gonna go have a good time."
Nice.
That's cool. Yeah, I think those will definitely be getting bigger pretty soon. Just
10 years, man. 10 years. I'm telling you, 10 years from now, 15 years, every American that's into drifting, that'll be probably one of their go-tos. It'll be within our price bracket. As soon as that's faithfully under 10 grand, later.
Yeah.
Like, they're going to come our way, man.
Right. Yeah. So, is there anything that you think that they could improve on for next year? Or, like, just some things that might be helpful to change, or...
I mean, the things that would definitely need to happen as a driver for it to be better would really just be more so, and I think it's just something that everyone, it's like a caveat for really everyone. Like, everyone kind of learned, like, I'm not saying that Aaron did a bad job organizing this
obviously,
thing.
but, the goal is to get better, you know?
Yeah, he was going, you know, it was his first time doing it, and he was trying to enjoy the trip as a driver just as much as he was an organizer, you know?
Yeah.
But it would be contacting, like, whatever liaison. Basically, every track that we went to, we had, like, some kind of a liaison, like someone who, like, either had a hookup at the track or someone who knew the area or something like that. We would need to get, like, maybe 3 or 4 volunteers to come out to every track day and just, like, be corner workers or... You know, just like someone who would like help out at every track, because that was the one thing that we were missing. That was definitely one thing that was missing at Grange when everything went down. Like we would have had like corner workers on the track with like a flag, because when the whole fire thing with Rudy went down, I mean he was drifting for like 30 seconds on fire. Like his car was on fire. Maybe not 30 seconds. Maybe it was 10 seconds. Maybe it just felt really long because you're sitting there watching your friend drift on fire, and we're all jumping from the sidelines, waving our hands like, "Yo, you're on fire!" But he can't hear anything. He probably thinks we're all just getting hyped on shit. And if we would have had like some form of a, you know, flagger or anyone there to do that, that could have, you know, maybe helped the situation out a little bit. spin outs and stuff like that. I mean, that situation never really happened all that much because, we're all, and also like as far as the organization thing, the group of people that were on the trip really made that kind of flow really well because we had all been to, 200 drift events easy. We all know how they run. We all know what needs to happen. We all know what we need to do to make them go smoothly. But yeah, basically it would be corner workers, volunteers at the track, at every different track that we go to. Because I'm sure, anyone would have wanted to. People were so pissed off that they couldn't come spectate. But we couldn't have that for, the track's sake because insurance reasons. Yeah, like every track that we went to, we only really rented out one track, I think. And then every other track was like a small donation or it was just completely free. And so we couldn't really be like, oh, yeah, give us this track for free, and we're going to have spectators here, and yada, 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 yada. It was just been a nightmare. And so something like that, a volunteer, a bigger media crew, because even though I had people come with me and help me with media, and everyone else did too, it would have just been better to have, like, dedicated, like, this dude's doing video, this dude's shooting pictures, because we kind of all missed out. There was only one guy, really, for the trip that had to do everything, and that was kind of like a lot for one person because he had to make sure Aaron had everything he needed for the actual video that they're making. So it was really hard for like every single driver to get like some photos, kind of thing. So it would just be like maybe like a little bit bigger, maybe like a whole truck for just media people to have like maybe 3 media people instead of 1 or 4. That would have been a good thing. I think that would be a good addition to the trip. But all these things, they cost money. Aaron probably spent a bunch of money out of his pocket to make all this stuff happen, and so it's just all what's really feasible for people. And as drivers, we were all kind of, dependent. Like they were all requiring us to basically do that stuff ourselves, and we all had someone that could do that. But then you're in the moment and type, and so much stuff's going on at once. Everybody can't be everywhere, And
Right.
like most of the tracks, there would be like 2 or 3 sweet turns that people would be, get stacked up at or doing stuff like that. And so it'd be cool to have someone everywhere that was just dedicated. Oh, I'm gonna chill right here all day and shoot, So
Nice.
I think that basically just those 2 things, basically just volunteers and a little bit more media people would have made the trip really, really a lot better.
Cool.
It seems like all that stuff is manageable too.
Yeah.
I think it's all stuff that I think Aaron did an amazing job.
I'm just amazed he
And I
pulled it
think,
off,
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
I'm
pulled it
amazed.
off, everything. That's
I'm
a
amazed the
feat in
trip
itself.
went as well as it did. Like, I think everyone was. No one really got left behind, which was kind of like the joke we all had on the trip, which was, when you break down, you're going to be stuck. Where I really messed up, too. I really messed up because Aaron was all like, yeah, if you break down, you're gone. We're leaving you. We're going to drive by with the camera and wave at you. And then one day, when we're out in Cali, he rents like some crazy Tesla and goes to do like mountain runs up in like the hills of LA and stuff, and the Tesla like blows a tire and they have no spare tire and they're all stranded. And I was the only person at the house, and I really should have fucked with him and been like, no, bro, you broke down. We got to leave you there. You're on the side of that mountain. Got to figure it out. But no, like I ended up driving up there and picking him up and bringing him back down or
You
whatever.
blew a tire on a Tesla.
Yeah, they blew a tire on a Tesla. I know, knowing how Aaron drives now, I can only imagine, especially where I had to go pick him up. Like, it was literally like in one of those mountain roads that you see on like a video game, like where it was like a mountain and it's just like a squiggly road the whole way up it, And so I know, like I was driving in my truck, like I was hearing the tires chirping and doing like 30. So I know his crazy ass was like doing like 60 miles an hour, especially in those Teslas. They are like retarded.
Yeah.
So...
Yeah, that's crazy. Wow. So it sounds like a legit, like, crazy awesome event if you can actually make it happen. The biggest thing is, it takes 2-3 weeks to do, and not everyone's got that free time. But it's cool that it's a thing, and it's cool that it's like something you can do, because drag racing has drag week, so, it's kind of nice that there's going to be a drifting equivalent to that as well. Yeah. But Again, thanks Dustin for talking to me about the actual event. Hopefully you guys get some good ideas on what this event was about, what it's for. And obviously if you guys probably want more information, or if Aaron's going to do it again next year, he's going to be your point of contact. But sounds like a really nuts event. Again, thanks for watching this video on the review. And we will have a whole bunch more on a whole bunch of other stuff coming soon. Thanks.